this is the presentation for any new employer intern who is onboarding at the Homeless Alliance. This is just a way to watch it if you're unable to attend onboarding in person. But it's pretty much the same experience. So I like to start out with our mission statement, which is rallying the community to end homelessness. This is a really important part of what we do. We work a lot very closely with the community, and their support can impact us in a very positive way. But if they don't support us, it can be detrimental. We rely highly on donations that come from our community. That can be monetary donations, but also items. And so having the community support is really important. When you have community buy-in to what we are trying to do here, it makes things a lot smoother. We have a lot of volunteers here that come from our community. So that way everyone can see kind of what we're doing here instead of just following us on social media. They could actually, kind of see the process and everything. So we really pride ourselves in rallying the community to end homelessness with us. The next slide is just pretty much talking about the document review that we need to do. So I do need IDs for the I-9 verification. That can be a passport. And if you have that, that's all I need. It can be an ID or a driver's license and a social or a birth certificate. If you're a child, maybe for Sasquatch under the age of 18, then school records, school ID can also count. But I do have a list of documents that are eligible for I-9 use, so I can send that if you need that. But typically most people use an ID and social or a passport. Completing your Paycom is also really important. You would have been sent the link from me prior to your first day, and it allows you to log in and complete your onboarding before you actually start. That's really important to finish that because once you complete it and then I complete things on my end, it allows you to be an employee in our Paycom system, and that's how you get paid. So if you don't complete it, you're not going to be on our payroll. And so everyone wants to get paid. So that is some good incentive to finish those Paycom tasks. And also you should get a swag bag. So you get a notebook with a pen, a water bottle. There's a little stress ball. You get one t-shirt. And I usually try to put a curbside magazine in there, so that way everyone knows what curbside is. We do have additional t-shirts though that you can purchase if you want. You can just come see me about that. These are just some of the perks of working here. We do have a very diverse culture at the Homeless Alliance. That's important because we have a very diverse population that we are serving. And in order to make sure everyone is being served correctly and has someone that they can meet with that makes them feel comfortable, it's very important that our employee population is also very diverse. And so that is something I feel like we can really pride ourselves on. We do have a very open-minded and open door policy. This is one place that you can really be your true self. And for the most part, it is supported and even encouraged. But also everyone is just very willing to help, which is great. We do offer employee assistance. So that is therapy sessions. It changes based on the fiscal year, how many we are able to have. Currently, it's indefinite until July 1 of 2024. But it is through Sunbeam, and there is a link at the end of this. If you would like to click on it and sign up, you can also call Sunbeam directly and just say, hey, I'm a Homeless Alliance employee. I'd like to sign up for the EAP, and you can do it that way. We actually have really great PTO and benefits, and we encourage people to use that frequently. Flexible scheduling is something that most roles offer, at least if you're going to be in the WRC. Our shelter roles, unfortunately, are not as flexible because we have to be open to serve the clients. One of my things that I do in this position is I provide ongoing trainings throughout the year. So I try to have one a month. at least, and those go out through calendar invites, as well as tours of our partner agencies and then employment bonding opportunities. These are just things that we do maybe once a month after work. They are not mandatory, so it's completely voluntary if you want to go, but it's just a way for a lot of us to connect because there's so many people here and so many people work off-site at different locations now. And so it gives us an opportunity to kind of meet each other. Let's see. Besides employment bonding, we have supervision offered to students who are getting their degree in social work, and that can be bachelor's or master's level. And then, of course, the Hot Mess Express. Everybody loves that. You'll likely hear about it. But January through typically September, once a month, a cart will come around with food and beverage with a theme. And it's free for employees. And so everybody likes to get, like a free snack during the day. And it's even better when it's delivered to you. So, for example, in September, it's Hispanic Heritage Month. So we did some Hispanic food with homemade horchata. We did summer favorites in June, just examples like that. But the theme is always noted, and then a menu will be provided about a few days in advance, so that way you can know what to expect. So the full handbook is in Paycom if you just really want to read it one day. But these are the highlights that I have to go over with you because these are the things that you should have signed for in Paycom. So workplace bullying, sexual harassment, and any other harassment is a zero tolerance on this campus. It's definitely grounds for termination. And if it's a client that is doing these things, it is grounds for potentially being barred. And depending on the situation, the client could be banned. However, we very rarely ban clients from property because we know they do need services. Reporting child abuse in the state of Oklahoma, it's a law that if you know or suspect of child abuse, that you have to report it. And you can do that online or by phone with DHS. It doesn't come up too often here just because we don't see kids around here very much. It's mostly the parents. Even though we do have a family program, we are typically catering to the parents of that family. And there may be occasions when school is out that kids are found at the day shelter with their family to eat. Let's see, attendance and punctuality. You are going to have a set schedule with your supervisor that you should both be on the same page and know what that is. And so please try to adhere to that as much as possible. Social media is pretty important for multiple reasons. One, we don't want to share anything or post anything that we created about a client that could be breaking confidentiality for that client. We do have a photo and story consent that we must have signed in order to be able to post on social media. But also Taylor is our director of communications, and she is typically the one who is going to be the one to post those stories. So if you have something that's a good idea, just run it by her. She will likely post it, and then we can reshare anything that the Homeless Alliance posts. But also just be mindful what you choose to post and share. If you say on Facebook, like, hey, I work at the Homeless Alliance, but then you share some articles about how poverty should be criminalized. That does not match up with our mission statement. And since that could be public information, anyone could see that. So a donor could see that, a board member could see that. And then they might wonder, like, why are you working here if that's how you feel, kind of thing. So just be mindful of social media. We do have a drug and alcohol policy. It pretty much states that you are an adult, so what you do at home outside of your work hours is your business. However, do not come to work intoxicated or under the influence of any kind of drug, alcohol, whether it be medical marijuana or an illicit drug. It is fine if you have a medical card. We do not need a copy of it. However, if you were to be injured on the job, then you would be drug tested to make sure that injury is not related to being under the influence of anything. because if you are, then you are not able to be eligible for workman's comp. We will not be able to pay for that. But if you have an injury and you don't have anything in your system, then we will pay for your workman's comp. So typically that is the only time people are drug tested. However, if people are reporting that there might be some suspicious behavior, or they notice that you're acting a little differently, or maybe saw you get out of your car and a lot of smoke came out with you, then there may be reason for a drug test. So really don't do those things at work, and then you won't have a problem. Employee conduct, we are the professionals here. We're all human, and so I know that we get frustrated at times as well. But basically, we are trying to serve a population with a lot of challenges, a lot of barriers, and they also don't have a lot of the social norm skills that we were taught. And that's usually because of higher education that they didn't have the privilege to attend. And so we always want to conduct ourselves in a professional manner. And if you need to vent, you can always do that with me, with HR, your supervisor. Just make sure that the door is closed and we're venting in a professional way. Overtime, so a week here is 37.5 hours, so typically 7.5 hours a day. Overtime is anything over 40 hours. So you can work 37.5 and you can work up to 40 without going overtime. But if you are reaching overtime, you need to have probably a conversation with your supervisor. We don't love people to keep going into overtime because you're going to get a lot closer to burnout if that happens. And also, really the only time we do allow overtime is in the winter, because we have winter shelter operations and occasionally we need other people to fill in for that. We are allotted 2 community impact days a year, so that is where you're pretty much given PTO to go volunteer somewhere else. So you can, volunteer at your kids' school, a food bank, an animal shelter, a peaceful protest, anything like that that could benefit a cause as well. So you get 2 of those days a year. Conflict resolution, basically stating that we really encourage people to resolve conflict amongst each other if that's possible. So really just encouraging to have a sit-down conversation so that you can both say your piece and try to get back on the same page, figure out maybe where the misunderstanding came from. However, there are times where conflict is much more severe and it requires more mediation than just a simple conversation between the 2 people. So the supervisor may get involved at that point, and then Alex, our director of HR, may also be around for that. Conflict of interest, that is stating that if you have a partner, spouse, any kind of relative that would like to work here, they are still welcome to apply. We just always want to know ahead of time because you can never directly supervise one another, or you can never go over one another within the pay scale. And so we just want to make sure that is known ahead of time, so that we can keep everything fair. But also if, you have someone that is related to you, but they are the perfect fit for the job, we definitely want to try to make that happen. Some more handbook, PTO. PTO is great. Like I said, a day is 7.5 hours. Your first 4 years, you accrue 6.52 hours per pay period. So twice a month, you accrue almost an entire day. You can use PTO after 90 days, but with that flexible schedule. So sometimes you can really work around PTO until it's available to you. Dress code is pretty simple. We like to say dress for your day. So if you're going to an important meeting, you might dress up a little bit more than normal. But if you are, out in the community or moving a client in, then you want to dress comfortably. If it's a campus cleanup day, you definitely want to dress comfortably and not in clothes that you mind potentially getting dirty. We do recommend closed-toed shoes, unless you're like in accounting or something where you don't go out and you're pretty much on your computer, that might be fine. But typically we would request closed-toed shoes. We don't want shorts so short that your t-shirt covers it, and we're not sure if you have on pants. We don't really want clothes that are so tattered and torn that you may need to be having a visit to the clothing closet rather than your client. So just always be mindful of what you're putting on before you come to work. Like I said, we have a lot of HA t-shirts, long sleeves, things like that. You can always purchase, and you're pretty much guaranteed to be solid with that. So you can always ask if you have dress code questions. Our health insurance is great. Our benefits are now through Paycom. So once you are in Paycom, you can log back in and sign up for your benefits. If you are a full-time employee, you have 2 weeks to do this, so there's not necessarily a rush. We have Blue Cross and Blue Shield, and there are 3 different plans. The basic plan is what I use, and it covers pretty much everything. And because I do not have any dependents or a spouse to add to my plan, it is 100% paid by the employer. So I get physical health, dental, and vision completely free. But if you do have a spouse, a partner, and kids you would like to add, it will tell you in Paycom how much adding each one of those will be. So it's pretty cut and dry, so you know what's going to be coming out of your paycheck. The other plans just include more things that the original plan doesn't. You may have a doctor out of network, and so the second or third plan may cover them, or you may live further away where your hospitals are out of network, and you may want a different plan for that. I know the second plan is about $6 out of each paycheck, so $12 a month. So still very reasonable. But if you do have in-depth questions about benefits, you can schedule a meeting with Alex. She used to go over benefits with new employees before it went into Paycom. Violence and weapons in the workplace. That is just a big no. Don't bring your weapons here if you have them. Keep them at home, preferably keep them in the car. Violence is a 0 tolerance as well. And that also goes for our guests. So guests at the day shelter, they have been barred frequently for violence amongst each other usually. And if they have weapons, we ask that they turn them over because there is a metal detector they go through, and that will write their name on it and they can get it back when they leave for the day. Staff and client relationships. Don't have those at all, please. That is the one main thing to take away from this is you're having a relationship with a client is detrimental to their progress, and it's not good for you either. Our clients are here for assistance because they're homeless and likely have a lot of other trauma they're trying to overcome. And adding a relationship with an employee is just explosive. Remote work and flex hours. A lot of positions here do have that. If you are one that is eligible for remote work and flexing your hours, you just need to discuss that with your supervisor. Performance reviews are typically done for new employees after your first 90 days, so 3 months. And then after that, it's just dependent upon how often they need to be done. So it may be quarterly, it may be once a year, especially after you've been here for a while. But it's really just a chance for you and your supervisor to get on the same page and make sure everything's going well and have something in writing. Raises are not tied to performance reviews. We do have a raise scale, like a pay scale of how we're trying to do that with raises. And Alex has that for anyone to view. Our auto policy is essentially stating that if you are using your personal vehicle for a work duty and you are in an accident that does not involve another party. So for example, the roads are really icy and you're driving to take a space heater to your client. And you hit a slick spot and hit a curb or something really hard and it messes up your car to the point where it's not drivable, then you need to file a claim and you can pay your deductible, then turn everything into the Homeless Alliance and they will reimburse you your deductible up to $1,000. Disabilities are also very important. If you have a disability that is mental, physical, learning disability, substance use, please report that to your supervisor or Alex in HR. We do want to be very accommodating with things like that because we don't want anyone to feel like they are struggling to do their job or that they're having to do things that make them uncomfortable just to get the job done. So we are very open to accommodating for disabilities, but we do need to just know what they are so that we can address it immediately. And then our holidays, we have a lot of holidays off. As you can see, I will say Veterans Day is only you only get that day off if you were in the military of some kind. And if the holiday falls on a Saturday, we take the Friday prior off. And if the holiday falls on a Sunday, we take the following Monday off. There are some positions here that have to work on holidays, like being at the shelter, the night shelter, or our day shelter, in which case you get paid double for holidays that you work. Safety. So safety is obviously a very important aspect when you are working with a wide variety of people, some experiencing mental health, substance use, both. And so we do have an annual OSHA safety training that is typically held in October during Employee Week. It is 4 to 5 hours of building safety. And so, although it is likely important to talk about ladders and bloodborne pathogens for hours, it is also encouraged to maybe bring something you can work on or a coloring book or something that you can kind of stay busy with as well. And now we have James. He is our director of security. And so he has come on board and has made a lot of new policies and procedures that really are helping us get on board with safety. We are doing a lot of drills so that everyone can be aware of what things mean. Chris is another Homeless Alliance employee who is our security here. And he is often walking around from Westtown to the day shelter to the SRO. So just keeping an eye on the campus. We have a critical incident report that is done when anything happens. And those are reviewed bi-weekly by the safety team. There are also some past trainings, such as home-based safety training and de-escalation that can be found in the SharePoint. So once you have met with Tucker for IT, he can set you up with those, and then you can access them. We do have a panic button at the front desk, but since our security has improved so much, we don't really need to use it much. And then we have contract security with TKO. So they are at our day shelter and will be at our night shelter. They are trained, they are armed, they know exactly what they're doing. So really, we're pretty safe with them being here now. We do have a tailgating policy in the handbook, and it's stating that if someone is trying to come in a locked door that does not have a badge, please redirect them to the front desk. I know sometimes it's a pain. They don't want to walk around, but if we don't know them, we don't know what they're here for. And so every employee has a badge with their name on it and will soon have a picture on it as well. And if you are an employee who doesn't have one, please get with me as soon as possible. But that will also allow you to have a key card. And so you should be able to get in locked doors. So a lot of people may say, well, I'm here to volunteer. That's fine. Go through the front. If it's someone who says like, hey, I'm a new employee, it's my first day, great, welcome, go to the front. So really, we just want to direct everyone through the front desk, and then they can talk to Brooke and she can contact the people who are needed. We don't want anyone who might be a disgruntled employee, ex-employee, or a disgruntled client coming through and not knowing what their intentions are. And so we just want to be safe that way. We do talk about bloodborne pathogens because we do have janitorial positions here that clean the bathrooms. And so they could potentially be coming into contact with bloodborne pathogens. So if you are here to work in custodial, you will definitely want to know where the PPE is. We have some at the day shelter and we have some at the SRO. But PPE is available. If you're uncertain, like maybe I should wear it, maybe I shouldn't, you probably should. Josh at the day shelter, he wore it one day because he needed to clean out a kennel because a dog had a bit of a tooth explosion happen. And so again, dealing with feces, he wore it, it was safe, he got it cleaned. So a lot of positions here don't really come into contact with this and don't need to wear PPE. Like if you're a case manager and you're with a client who might cut themselves or something, I always encourage them like, all right, let's wash it, meaning they need to wash it. We have first aid kits here. I encourage them to bandage it on their own. If it's a wound that is just bleeding profusely, that's probably a time where we'll want to call IMSA because that likely needs some medical attention and probably some stitching that we cannot do here. All right, so we have a critical incident report and then we have a grievance form. The grievance form is essentially used by an employee or a client anytime that they feel like they have been mistreated, treated unfairly, discriminated against. Grievances are given to Alex, the director of HR, and critical incident reports are given to Megan Mueller. However, critical incident reports, employee grievances are given to Alex and client grievances are given to Megan. But a critical incident report, those are more often used by staff because we have to do one anytime IMSA's called, law enforcement, fire, a crisis service, things like that. If a client is barred from the day shelter, we do a critical incident report. I would do one anytime there is kind of a threat, whether it be a verbal threat by a client, a physical threat by a client. These are things that we really want to establish documentation for because this could potentially be a pattern with a client and we are able to review these. And like I said, these critical incident reports are staffed bi-monthly or bi-weekly, so twice a month by James and other members of the safety team. And there's a quick QR code how to access a critical incident report. Sometimes more than one person does one. So, if you are with an employee and they pass out for some reason, then you as the witness would call 911. You would do your critical incident report based on, your view of what happened. And then the individual who passed out could do one whenever they are able to again. So sometimes multiple parties will be doing the same. We'll be doing more than one report, but for the same event. Third-party statements, these don't get used too often, but essentially they're used when you have a client who is in a crisis and they need to be sent really to a crisis center or a psychiatric ward in a hospital. So a lot of times they are saying that they have thoughts of self-harm or hurting, killing someone else. But when the police arrive, they say, no, I'm okay. And then the police leave. And so writing a third-party statement, you can provide that to the officer. It's really important to state that the client is a potential danger to themselves and the community. That allows us another sense of liability really to that statement. But this is where you can locate it in the all staff folder. And then it's called third party statement folder. So it's pretty basic. It's always better to do one if you're unsure rather than to not. Housing First. So Housing First is the model that Oklahoma City has taken upon while we're working to end homelessness. So there's a long definition. However, Housing First is essentially housing people where they're at. So meeting them exactly where they're at without putting preconceived conditions upon them to meet. So if you're working with a client, you would never say, hey, okay, you need to get a job. You need to get back into your mental health services and get back on your medication before I can house you. We would never do those things. Granted, those sound like really great things that a client would want to work on, and you can address that with your client once they're housed. Excuse me. So we always want to house the client, no matter what, the best we can in the best kind of housing situation, housing program that's going to be best for them. And then later on, when you're working on their goals with them, that's when you can address those things. And clients are a lot more likely to want to work on those things and be successful at doing them once they have a place to call home and feel safe. De-escalation. So this is often used. Clients come in crisis, but you really want to try to create a private, safe area for you and for the person in crisis. You know, you really want to be open and not judgmental. You want to provide great personal space, so you don't want to encroach upon their space. Also, like how you're standing, if they're sitting and you're standing, that could be an intimidating like body position. And so I would also suggest sitting, or if they're standing, maybe you should also stand. Always offering a snack or something to drink is helpful. I've found that when someone is putting things in their mouth, they are unable to yell as easily. And then sometimes they could be really hungry and haven't eaten for days. And so they may having that snack and some water really help kind of get them stabilized. But a de-escalation really is verbal, nonverbal cues, body language, everything like that, a lot of active listening, but it all has to do without physically touching the person. So you don't need to wrap your arms around them in an embrace, but you also don't need to take them down in like a WWE hold. So best practice, give space, don't physically touch the client. Being trauma informed is incredibly important when we are dealing with the homeless population. Being homeless alone is incredibly traumatic, but there's a lot of trauma that goes along with being homeless. So a lot of substance use, mental health, a lot of loss of family, or just support systems in general. So we always want to say that being trauma informed is important, especially when you are going to engage in conversation. I always let the client share with me what they want, whether that be deep or surface level things, but never to just pry deep into the client's life. Now, there may be times, like, for example, at an intake or when the case manager is about to enroll someone in a program, that there are going to be questions that are sensitive, but you can still ask them in a trauma-informed way, and they're asked simply so that we can understand what the client's needs are, things that we really need to be aware of as well. How to talk to clients? Well, honestly, it's just the basic kind of etiquette when you want to talk to anyone that is just another human. Be polite, be open-minded, do not be judgy. You know, be an active listener. Don't try to, you know, be ready for saying the next thing. It's a conversation between, you know, two people. You have time and space, so nothing has to be forced. And there may be times where there's awkward silence, and that's okay too. We are very focusing on people's strengths, so strengths based. You know, if they're talking to you about all the bad stuff that's going on and you know that they've accomplished some good things, bring those up. It's really great to establish rapport with the guests, but you also have to be mindful of boundaries. So again, kind of with being trauma informed, you don't have to dive deep into your past to connect with the client, but you can connect on very, you know, surface level public things. So if they're wearing a sports like hat and you like the team, great. You know, things like that, just basic conversation, but establishing like a connection and similar interests. But again, do not overshare. But really, lastly, and the most importantly, is the homeless population. They are humans. They deserve their basic rights, just like all of us want. And the majority of them do not want to be homeless and out there on the streets. And so please keep that in mind when you're talking to them, because you may not know their background yet. You don't know what caused their homelessness, and we're here to help them. Clients unfortunately do pass away, and then they also pass away at a rate much faster than individuals who have not experienced homelessness and all the other trauma that goes along with it. So if you do find that your client has passed away and you are the one that has discovered the client, please do not mess with anything at all. You want to call 911 immediately. You want to search in HMIS to see if there's an emergency contact that we can notify. And then you also want to do a really detailed note in HMIS about what happened to the client, what you know, and then you can accent the client based on the reason for being deceased. But also definitely keep in mind our EAP therapy, because there are times when you are very close to your client and you've maybe worked with them for some years and then they pass away. And that is also very hard on us, because sometimes we are the closest people to our clients because they don't have anyone else. And so please remember to take care of yourself as well when something like this happens. Ring Central is our phone system, so we don't have office phones anymore. We have an app that we can put on a cell phone or a laptop or a tablet, and we use everything through the app. So everyone gets a little phone number programmed to them, and you can search based on people's names to find their number. But you can call and text and leave voicemails through it, and it's cool because the voicemail will be transcribed to you. But Tucker is our IT guy, and so when you meet with him for IT setup, he will go over Ring Central with you. Also, how to access past trainings. We've had quite a lot of good ones, so they may be applicable to your position. But again, once you are set up with IT, you are going to go to SharePoint through your email Outlook, and it will take you to some folders. You want to click on the All Staff folder, and that is a folder that we all have access to. We can't edit things in there or delete them, but everyone can view what is in All Staff. Then you'll go to the folder called Training Resources. And then after that, all of the trainings are broken down by title. They are titled very specifically to what the topic is, so they should be really easy to be found. If you need to book a room here, it's also quite simple. A lot of people have to share an office now because we've grown so much. So if you know you're going to meet with a client that needs a confidential space, or if you're going to have a meeting and you need to book a room, you can go through your email Outlook as well. I always go to the calendar and you just title it, choose your date, time, all that stuff, who you want to invite. And then there is a location option, and you can click on that, and all of the meeting rooms should be there to choose from, and it will say busy if it's already taken during that date and time, or it will say available. And if it's available, you can schedule it, and then you will get an email notification stating that the name of the room, so for example, large classroom, has accepted your invitation. So that means that room is booked to you. Email etiquette. We email a lot here. And so we try to keep certain emails to a minimum if possible. There is an HA staff email, so that goes to every single person who is a Homeless Alliance employee. And sometimes those do need to be sent out, and sometimes they don't, but people think they do. And so if you are going to send an HA staff email, please blind copy it. That way, if someone does hit reply all, it still only goes to the sender instead of going to every HA employee. If you notice that someone does send an HA staff email using to and not blind copying, please don't be that person that hits reply all. because not everyone needs to know what's going on with the box truck. So to kind of help with those emails, we have distribution lists. And so here are a few of them. So for example, we have a case manager one. So anyone here who is a case manager or a housing navigator will go into that list. So if a client walks into the front desk and says, hey, I need to see my case manager, but I can't remember who it is, Brooke can email just the case manager distribution list, and hopefully one of them will be like, oh yeah, that's my client, rather than emailing everyone who doesn't even work with clients. So like admin staff, finance, they don't need to get those emails. And then there's more. So yeah, like even a notary, I used that once. That was helpful. The last one is the help desk ticket. So that's for IT. If you are having IT issues, please send a help desk ticket to Tucker. If you email him, he will probably delete it. But having the tickets helps him organize to figure out how many is he getting, what does he need to address first. And then once the ticket has been taken care of, you'll get an email back stating like, hey, you're done. And so it's just helpful for all of us to know how many IT tickets are being put in as well. Teams is also something that we use. It can kind of help limit emails at times, but also it's just used for different things. So, you can chat directly with one person, or you can create a group chat if you want to do that instead of having like a little group email. There's a bunch of different channels within Teams that we use for different things. So like there's a Homeless Alliance and a general one. So that is pretty much where a lot of stuff can go in there. Barred clients. So if any client gets barred from the shelter, goes in there. Celebrations is where we post for people's birthdays. There's a client resources tab, a farewell tab. So when employees leave us, party planning committee has their own channel. And then we have a pet outreach one now. So oftentimes pets get left here or dumped here, and we're kind-hearted people and want to find homes for them. So we can post their picture and things like that in pet outreach and see if anyone has any resources or wants to adopt a pet themselves. In-kind donations are really important. They usually come to our front desk, and the form is located up there, but there are times where, since the day shelter will be open on the weekends now, that donations may be taken there. They may be taken to the SRO. So there are forms everywhere. You want to ask the donor to fill out the form, but do not force them to. If they say, no, I don't want to, let them go. But if they do want to, great. Just have them fill it out the best they can, make a copy and give them the copy. And then you keep the original. And then that way our development specialist and director of development can go over those, figure out what we're getting inventory wise, send a thank you note, and then the donor can also use it on their taxes. HMIS is the software system that we use to document our notes and put all of our clients' information in. It's pretty user-friendly. There is a release that has to be signed by the new employee and the supervisor and turned into Keith. And once he receives that, he will send you the next Zoom link for the training. Again, if you have questions past your training, Haley Phelps in compliance does a HMIS Q&A often, but your supervisor can also help you navigate. But it's very easy. There's just tabs at the top that you click through and fill out the information. So we are growing a lot. And so instead of just being the Homeless Alliance here, we are the Westtown Resource Center, because we do have a few partner agencies in the building with us. We have the day shelter right next door, and that serves the guests from 6:30 to 4. Monday through Friday. And like I said, we will be opening on weekends now. And then we have, yeah, like I said, 7 days a week. We have some more. So the SRO is the 20-unit apartment complex on our property. It is permanent housing for clients in a program with a voucher. So they do have to have case management tied to it. 20 units, it's pretty much always filled and there's a waiting list for it, but it's a very ideal housing location for people who have been homeless for a very long time, people who have mental health, substance use, learning disabilities. It's close, it's on campus, so the case manager can get there easily and there's security there at night. We do have curbside flowers and apparel now, and they are located pretty closely to each other. I want to say curbside flowers is on 5th and Classen, and apparel's on like something in Linwood, maybe. They're walkable to each other. We also have a lot of Homeless Alliance employees embedded at our partner agencies. So as you can see, Remerge, YWCA, Palomar, Diversion Hub, OKC Public Schools, Middale Public Schools, the library, places like that. So that way, when people are going to these places for their other reasons, so like Diversion Hub, they're typically going there with help or something to do with the criminal justice system. But they also state they're homeless. We have an employee there who can help them with that. And then we have a large rented space at Shepherd Center that is on 23rd Street and not sure the cross street, but our entire healthy housing program is there. They serve anyone with a positive HIV or AIDS status. Our outreach team is located there, compliance, accounting, and then a lot of docking stations for people to just plug in and do their notes and things like that if they need to. The city of Oklahoma City is also where our coordinated entry system is housed, and that is me and Jesse. So starting November 1st of 2023, we are going to have our very first night shelter. It is just down the street from Homeless Alliance, and it operates November 1st through March 31st of 2024. It is staffed completely by Homeless Alliance employees. It opens at 4 p.m., so right when the day shelter is closing, and it closes at 7 a.m., and the day shelter opens at 6:30, so there is an overlap to where clients do not have to be outside in the cold or the heat. City Care has a new program called MO for transportation. So it's free. They pick up clients and take them wherever they need to go so they can get them from shelter to shelter, things like that. They can also take them to other places, food banks, things like that. The night shelter will offer some soft advocacy services, but really we are just trying to make sure people are safe and comfortable and warm. And so if they're also needing help, like, getting a new ID or things like that, we want to refer them to the day shelter the next day, because then they can sign up to speak with an advocate who has an office. They can sit down and do those things with them. But, we will have minor things. So like if someone really needs gloves, we can probably hand those out. There are showers there on an emergency basis, and there will be like a snack, light dinner provided. And then the setup is with bunk beds. So there's 150 bunk beds and it can accommodate 300 folks. Meeting the clients where they're at. This can mean a lot of different things. So one thing could just be the vocabulary that you use while speaking with your client. Everyone has different education levels, and so you want to make sure that you're speaking in a way that they can understand you and it makes them feel comfortable. So also, if you're meeting with them, I always try to be relatable. So I'm not going to wear like name brand fancy clothes because the clients do not have that. And if they look at you and feel like that you're inferior, then they're not going to want to open up to you. We also have an outreach team, like I mentioned before, and they can specifically meet clients where they're at the physical location. So they go out to camps a lot, and engage with folks who may not come up here and kind of help them get services started so that they could get them prepared for case management if they want housing. When you do set goals with clients, be encouraging to have the client set their goals. It's fine if you need to help guide them in a direction, but these are things that they want, and you really want to empower them to be the one to make those goals. Asking clients their preferred name and their pronouns is something that can be very respectful, and then remembering those and greeting the client, each time with the correct name and pronoun just really lets the client know that you care and that you're being respectful of their wishes. So we love to turn no into yes if possible. Our clients have been told no a lot in their life, sometimes by other agencies. And so we really want to hear them out. Now, there's going to be times where it is still a hard no because what they're asking is not a legitimate request. So if you're taking someone to get groceries and they say, can we stop by the liquor store? No, that is just a no. Like, we're getting groceries. That's a basic need. What you do after I drop you off at home, whether you walk, ride your bike, take the bus, if you go to the liquor store, then I cannot stop you. I can encourage you to not, but I cannot stop you, but I'm certainly not going to take you. But really turning no into yes is a lot of problem solving, a lot of staffing with your supervisor, a lot of providing resources to community partners. We do housing here, and so a lot of people need housing, but they also need food or clothing or eyeglasses. And so we have to provide referrals to those places, and oftentimes help them set that up and potentially provide transportation as well. DEI is very important here. We do want to make sure things are diverse, equitable, and inclusive. So we discuss things such as microaggressions, micro meaning small, and so it's on a smaller level. But oftentimes the speaker is not meant to be offensive, but the recipient could take it that way, and you just really need to be mindful of how the person reacts, body language, facial, what they say back to you, their tones, how they took that. So the example we had in microaggression training was, hey, Susan, I really like your hair. And she's like, oh, thanks. And then the speaker was like, yeah, it makes you look really feminine. And they're like, what do you mean by that? I was just trying to give you a compliment. And they're like, okay. So clearly that kind of conversation went downhill really quickly. And they were asking for more, clarity on what you're saying. But basically did not really seem like they loved that, even if you meant it as a compliment. So you could always leave it at, I like your hair. And you don't have to go any further. So we do have great microaggression training. And so if you're interested, let me know. There's also an unconscious bias. Unconscious meaning that people are not intentionally doing it. It's just something within them that could have been instilled when they were young, something that they were taught by, family or close friends, and they didn't never know was wrong. And so a lot of people throughout their life will discover what their unconscious bias is. And so really it's just being open to being aware and educating yourself on fixing it. And there is the link to the Social Work Code of Ethics. So weather policy. It's different depending on the position that you are in. But for tornadoes, you are encouraged to go into the innermost room of the building that you are in. However, there's really not that many safe places on campus. So really just do what's best, have people come inside for sure. If you're an employee and you need to leave, you can certainly do that. But again, use your discretion and make sure that you leaving is not even more dangerous than you staying. So But you want to let clients know that there's any kind of potential weather risk so that they can be aware, and they can also make their decision based on that. And this pretty much talks mostly about tornadoes. Now, if there's going to be potential severe weather, be aware of it. If there's a tornado risk, be aware, track it. If there is risk for ice, and you know that the day before, take your stuff home and work at home if you can. You can always take PTO if you feel like you need to. We don't want anyone to be put in a position where they feel like they're going to risk their life to get to work. There are people that will volunteer to pick you up, I'm sure. And then there's some people that live nearby who might be able to get to work easier than others. But I know that someone who lives 2 miles away may be experiencing very different weather than someone who is coming to work from Rush Springs. And so you just have to also be really mindful of the location, where you are and where you're going. But yeah, so that's pretty much about weather. We do have red flag alerts and drills now. These are things that James created with his new security policies. So the red flag alert, it will go off on Teams, text, and email to let you know if there is a potential threat of something. So if there is potentially an active shooter outside, you will get a red flag notification, and then you will follow the active shooter drill. There's a tornado, there's a fire, same thing. Sometimes we got a notification that there was a fire, but it was at Shepherd Center. So everyone at Westtown was fine, but the people at Shepherd Center needed to evacuate. So if there's a fire, evacuate the building. If there's a tornado, go inside or go home. And if there's an active shooter, the OSHA guidelines request, or I guess I should say suggest, you should run, hide, or fight. We can't tell you which one to do. It is suggested, I think, to hide. So that would kind of include, locking your door, turning off your light, hiding somewhere in your office, maybe hiding somewhere else in the building. If you run to get to your car, great. If you feel like, I think I can fight this person, then, that is definitely your judgment. Not encouraged, but you can do that. These are things that your supervisor will do for you. So I always say, when you're going to do your timesheet for the first time, sit down and do it with your supervisor. You want to get paid and we want to pay you. And if you don't do your timesheet correctly, you're not going to get paid. And so that's important. They can go over Teams and Ring Central and anything like email with you. If, IT was kind of fast, they'll make sure that you get business cards. And so they'll get your information, give it to Holly, get those ordered. We consider there to be a 90-day training period. And so you will definitely have an evaluation after your 3 months. And then you'll typically have a 1 month and a 3 month check-in with me just to make sure everything's going well. But yeah, they will also provide you the training material that you need and likely train with you on that material. This is just the alarm to this building. So if you are someone who likes to come to work super early or stay really late, this may be beneficial to you. There is an alarm at the day shelter, but you will have to ask Vincent for the code to that. Wi-Fi. So if you want to get set up on the Wi-Fi, it still kind of sucks, but it's better than nothing. And then the Resource Center Faster Wireless is typically the one that we use. And then there's a guest one, and it is usually written in the large classroom. Paycom. So at this point, you've logged into Paycom at least once to do your onboarding, but you'll log in as an employee. And then the different tabs there are pretty helpful. So time management is where you will go to do your timesheet, to turn it in, to get paid. The time off requests is where you will go to request PTO. There's also a little tab called accruals. You can keep an eye on that because it'll show you how much you have available. You can roll over 150 hours every July 1st. So if you have like 170 and it's June, you might want to consider taking some PTO. So that's where you can find that. Information is basically, phone number, address, emergency contacts. Those things can be updated at any time. The payroll tab is helpful. It shows each pay stub individually. So you can print those if you need. You can just view them. And now, like I said, benefits are in Paycom. So that is a new tab. So if you are a full-time employee and eligible for benefits, you can click there, and that's where you would go to get your benefits started. So benefits start the first of the following month. So if you start October 26th, your benefits start November 1st. You start March 6th, they start April 1st. So anytime you start, it will be the first of the next month. Here's a pretty basic kind of layout of how to complete your timesheet. So this might be helpful to have up while you're doing it. However, if you're someone who clocks in and out, you might have a little bit of different things to do. But this is for people who use the web time management sheet. And lastly, these are just helpful links. So if you need to get into Paycom, click there. If you're a supervisor, you will log in as a client and you will be given a client code. You can set up your 401k through here. Again, the employee assistance, which is the therapy, you can click on the link to sign up. I've also found it easier to call. We have an anonymous suggestion box. So if you have an idea, but you don't want to say it or you're not sure who to tell, you can click and write there. They only go to Alex and she sees them. Curbside Flowers has a website. And so if you want to purchase flowers, you can do that online. Curbside Apparel is also having a website, but they don't have a ton of stuff yet for the public to purchase. And then again, if you need to do a critical incident report, there is the link you can click on if you don't want to use that QR code. But there's many ways to find the critical incident report. So that is the onboarding PowerPoint in a nutshell. It's sorry that you had to sit through all that. It's a little better in person, but you get hopefully the main ideas of things. If you do have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to me, and I am happy to explain further anything that you might be unsure about.